The rock spoke to those who listened. Danny Reeves had learned this truth in the coal mines of West Virginia, where the mountain groaned before it moved and the walls whispered before they fell. Now, 16 light years from Earth, he heard that same whisper in alien stone that he stood at his station in Shaft 7 Delta, watching the massive drill chew through the mineral-rich rock of Palax 3. The Gorvan Mining Consortium employed workers from 12 different species here, and humans like Danny were still considered newcomers to deep space mining. Most aliens thought humans were physically strong but mentally weak. Danny did not argue with them. He simply did his work. The primary drill operator was a Gorvani named Halt. His species stood 8 feet tall, with skin like rough stone, and they believed they understood rock better than anyone. Halt watched his screens with bored confidence as the drill pushed deeper into a new mineral vein. Danny noticed the change first. The vibration through the floor shifted slightly. The color of the dust coming up through the shaft turned darker. Small things. Things most would miss. The readings are wrong, Danny said quietly. Holt barely glanced at him. Sensor problems. Happens all the time down here. No. Danny stepped closer, watching the screens. The rock composition is changing. We are drilling into something hollow. A young Talaxian named Rune looked up from his work. He was an apprentice with 4 arms and wide, curious eyes, assigned to learn from a human. What does hollow mean? Before Danny could answer, the drill broke through. The sound was like thunder trapped underground. The floor bucked beneath their feet. Screens flashed red warnings in 6 different languages. The drill had punched into a massive underground cavern, and now the ceiling of that cavern was collapsing upward into their shaft. Everyone back, Danny shouted, but there was nowhere to go. The collapse spread faster than anyone could run. Support beams twisted like paper. The main shaft buckled in 3 places. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut automatically, sealing sections to prevent total destruction. The shaking lasted 47 seconds. When it stopped, Danny found himself in darkness broken only by emergency lights. Dust filled the air so thick he could barely breathe. Around him, workers of various species coughed and groaned and called out in languages his translator could not process fast enough. Holt lay unconscious beneath a fallen beam. 2 Linari workers, bird-like beings with feathered arms, struggled to free him. A Gorvani foreman named Drask was shouting orders that nobody followed. Danny counted heads. 47 workers were trapped in this section with him. The main evacuation route was completely blocked. When he checked the communication terminal, he found only static. Oxygen recyclers are damaged, someone reported. The voice was shaking. Danny did the math in his head. With this many workers and damaged systems, they had maybe 6 hours of breathable air. Probably less. Panic began spreading through the group. Each species handled fear differently. The Gorvani became aggressive, looking for someone to blame. The Linari grew silent and still, their feathers pressed flat against their bodies. The Talaxians talked rapidly among themselves, all 4 hands moving in nervous gestures. Danny closed his eyes for a moment. He had been here before. Not this place, but this moment. 12 years ago, in a mine called Sago, he had stood in darkness while the mountains settled around him. 12 men in his section that day. Only 2 walked out that he opened his eyes. "Listen to me," Danny said. His voice was not loud, but something in it cut through the chaos. "We need to organize. Fighting and panicking will use up our air faster." Drask turned on him. The Gorvani foreman was massive, his stone-like skin cracked with age and old injuries. "Who are you to give orders, human? Your kind is known for breaking under pressure." "My kind has been mining dangerous ground for 300 years, Danny replied calmly. "I have survived 1 collapse already." "Have you?" Drask had no answer. Danny began assigning tasks. He sent the Gorvani workers to clear debris from the secondary passages, using their incredible strength. He asked the Linari to use their sharp senses to locate any air pockets or hidden spaces in the rubble. He put the Talaxians to work on the damaged equipment, their 4 hands perfect for delicate repairs. Nobody questioned him now. Rune stayed close to Danny as they moved through the damaged section. The young Talaxian watched everything the human did, learning. How do you stay calm? Rune asked. Danny considered the question. I am not calm. I am terrified. But fear does not help anyone right now, so I put it somewhere else. I will feel it later, if there is a later. They searched for an hour before Danny found it. A secondary ventilation shaft, barely visible behind a collapsed wall. It was narrow, designed for maintenance robots rather than workers. Most species could never fit through it. But a human, if he squeezed, might manage. The shaft led upward toward the surface levels. If someone could crawl through it, they could reach help. They could tell the rescue teams exactly where to dig. Danny began removing his protective gear. What are you doing? Rune grabbed his arm. All four hands gripped tight. You cannot go in there. It is too narrow, too unstable. You will die. Danny looked at the 46 other faces watching him. Alien faces, but he recognized the fear in their eyes. The same fear he once saw in his friends deep underground when the world fell on them. Maybe, Danny said, but maybe not. He stepped in the shaft and began to climb. Darkness had weight. Danny Reeves understood this as he pulled himself through the ventilation shaft, feeling the tons of rock pressing from every direction. His headlamp cut a small circle of light ahead, showing only more stone, more narrowness, more crawling to do. The shaft was barely wide enough for his shoulders. He moved on his belly, using elbows and knees to push forward inch by inch. The rough surface tore his clothing and scraped his skin. He had been crawling for an hour and covered maybe 200 meters. Behind him, 46 people waited with shrinking air. The shaft tilted upward, and Danny had to wedge himself between the walls to keep from sliding back. His muscles burned. Sweat dripped into his eyes despite the cold. The oxygen mask on his face had 2 hours of reserve air, but he was breathing hard, using it faster than planned that a memory came to him unbidden. Sago mine, 12 years ago. The explosion had come without warning. One moment they were working, the next, the world was fire and falling stone. Danny and 11 others had retreated to a sealed section, hoping rescue would come. For 41 hours, they waited in darkness. One by one, the carbon monoxide took them. Danny survived only because he was smallest, pressed into a corner where a tiny pocket of clean air remained. When the rescuers finally broke through, they found him unconscious, surrounded by the bodies of his friends that he still carried their names. He whispered them now, in the darkness of an alien shaft, because somehow it helped. Randy, Martin, Terry, George. The shaft narrowed. Danny stopped, his headlamp showing a squeeze ahead that seemed impossible. The walls pressed in from both sides, leaving a gap maybe 18 inches wide. His shoulders were broader than that he could not go back. The people behind him would die if he gave up. Danny exhaled completely, making himself as small as possible. He turned sideways, one arm extended ahead, the other pressed against his body. Then he pushed, rocks scraped against his ribs. For a terrible moment, he was stuck, unable to move forward or backward. The weight of the mountain squeezed his chest. He could not breathe. Panic clawed at his mind, the old fear rising like flood water. Jim, Junior, Dave. The names came out as gasps. Jesse, Alva, Fred. He pushed harder. Something in his shoulder made a grinding sound, and pain exploded through him. But he moved. Inch by inch, he forced himself through the squeeze until suddenly he was past it. Falling forward into a slightly wider section, he lay there, gasping, tears streaming down his face. His shoulder was dislocated, the arm hanging wrong. But he was through. After a moment, Danny reached over with his good hand, grabbed his useless arm, and slammed his shoulder against the wall. The joint popped back into place. He screamed, but the sound died quickly in the stone that he kept crawling. The next obstacle was water. The shaft dipped down and filled with murky liquid, probably runoff from the cooling systems. Danny could not tell how far the flooded section extended. He could not tell if there was air on the other side. He thought about the 46 people behind him. He thought about the 12 men at Sago who never got a walkout. Danny took 3 deep breaths, filling his lungs. Then he removed his oxygen mask and pulled himself into the water. The cold hit him like a physical blow. He kept his eyes closed against the murk and swam forward, pulling himself along the shaft walls. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. His lungs began to burn. 30 seconds. 40. His hand found air. Danny burst out of the water, coughing and gasping. The shaft continued ahead, climbing upward again. He put his oxygen mask back on and let himself rest for 1 minute. Just one. Then he crawled. The final stretch was a vertical climb. The shaft went straight up for what looked like 30 meters. There were no handholds, just rough stone that barely offered enough grip for his torn fingers. Danny wedged himself in the tube, back against one wall, feet against the other, and began the slow process of inching upward. His arms shook. His legs threatened to give out. The dislocated shoulder throbbed with every movement. He was 4 hours into the crawl now, and his body was failing, but above him he saw light. Not his headlamp. Real light from emergency fixtures in an upper maintenance section. Danny climbed toward it. When he finally pulled himself out of the shaft, he collapsed on the metal floor of a maintenance corridor. He lay there, unable to move, staring at the ceiling. His body was broken. His hands were bloody. He had never been so tired in his life, but he was through. After a long moment, Danny forced himself to his feet. He stumbled down the corridor until he found an emergency communication terminal. His fingers, torn and bleeding, fumbled with the controls. "This is Danny Reeves," he said, his voice raw. "Shaft 7 Delta, lower section. 46 workers trapped. Oxygen critical. I can give you exact coordinates for rescue." The response came immediately, voices overlapping with questions and commands. Rescue teams began mobilizing. For a moment, Danny felt relief wash over him. Then he heard the problem. The fastest route to the trapped workers required opening the emergency bulkheads manually from inside the collapse zone. The rescue teams could not reach the controls. Without those bulkheads open, they would never get to the survivors in time. Danny looked back at the shaft he had just crawled through. For hours of hell, and his body was already destroyed, he knew what he had to do. "I'm going back," he said. A Linari pilot named Dessa found Danny at the shaft entrance, preparing to descend again. Her feathered arms spread wide in a gesture of disbelief, and her translator struggled to keep up with her rapid speech. "This is madness," she said. "You are injured. You are exhausted. The doctors say you should not even be standing." Danny adjusted the fresh oxygen mask over his face. Someone had bandaged his hands while he reported the situation, white wrappings now spotted with blood. His shoulder had been roughly set by a medical drone, but every movement sent fire through his nerves. 46 people, he said simply. 5 hours of air left, maybe less. Send someone else. Send a drone. Send anything but yourself. The drones are too big. The other humans here are too big. Danny tested his grip, wincing. "I'm the only one who fits and knows the way." Dessa stared at him with eyes that held 3 pupils each, designed to see in darkness. What she saw in Danny's face made her step aside. He climbed in the shaft and began the descent. Going down was harder than going up. Gravity pulled at him, and his exhausted muscles struggled to control the slide. The vertical section nearly killed him twice, his hands slipping on stone slick with his own blood from the first trip. He jammed himself against the walls, hanging there in darkness, and forced himself to keep moving. The flooded section was colder this time, or maybe his body had nothing left to fight the chill. He swam through blind, lungs burning, and emerged on the other side, shaking so hard he could barely crawl. The squeeze that had dislocated his shoulder was somehow worse in this direction. Danny had to push through knowing exactly how much it would hurt. He did not let himself scream. Screaming wasted oxygen. 3 hours into the return journey, he heard voices. The trapped workers had gathered near the shaft entrance, waiting. When Danny's headlamp appeared in the darkness, a sound rose from them. Not quite a cheer, more like a collective exhale, as if they had all been holding their breath. Rune was the first to reach him. The young Talaxian used all 4 arms to help Danny out of the shaft, handling him as gently as possible. Danny collapsed against a wall, every part of him screaming for rest. "You came back," Rune said. There was something in his voice that Danny did not have the energy to name. You actually came back. The bulkheads, Danny gasped. We need to open them manually. Rescue is waiting on the other side. Drask pushed through the crowd. The Gorvani foreman looked different now. The arrogance was gone from his stone-like face, replaced by something that might have been respect. Tell us what to do, Drask said. Danny explained while catching his breath. The emergency bulkheads required 2 manual overrides, activated simultaneously from 2 different points. The controls were 15 meters apart, separated by a chasm where the floor had collapsed. I can reach one control, Danny said, but someone needs to reach the other. The gap is too wide for me to jump. I can make that jump, Drask said immediately. My species is built for such things. Danny looked at him. Hours ago, this Gorvani had challenged his right to lead. Now he was volunteering for the most dangerous task. Once we activate the overrides, we must hold them for 8 minutes, Danny warned. The system will fight us. It will try to close the bulkheads automatically. 8 minutes of constant pressure. I understand. If either of us lets go before the time is up, the bulkheads close. Anyone caught between them. Danny did not need to finish. Drask nodded slowly. Then we do not let go. They moved to their positions. Danny stood at one control station, his bandaged hands hovering over the manual override lever. Across the chasm, Drask waited at the other station. The gap between them was 5 meters of empty air above a drop into darkness. On my count, Danny called out. His voice was stronger now, steady by purpose. 3, 2, 1. Now. Both of them engaged the overrides at the same moment. The pressure was immediate and crushing. The system was designed to stay closed during emergencies, and every safety protocol fought against them. Danny felt the resistance through the lever, a force trying to tear his grip away. His torn hand screamed. Blood seeped through the bandages. He watched the timer on the wall, counting down the seconds. 0.8 minutes. 480 seconds. Across the gap, Drask struggled as well. Even his stone-like muscles strained against the system's resistance. His arms trembled, and small cracks appeared in his rocky skin from the pressure. Hold, Danny said, though he was speaking as much to himself as to Drask. Just hold. The trapped workers began moving toward the bulkheads. Rune organized them, calling out instructions, making sure the injured went first. They filed through the narrow opening, one by one, while Danny and Drask fought to keep the way clear. 4 minutes passed. Then 5. Then 6. Danny's vision started to blur. His body had given everything it had, and now it was taking what remained. He felt his grip weakening, his fingers going numb. Do not let go, Drask called across the gap. Human, do not let go. 7 minutes. Sparks flew from Danny's control station. The system was overloading, trying to force the bulkhead closed through any means necessary. Electricity arced through the lever, into his hands, through his body. He did not let go. The pain was beyond anything he had felt before. His muscles locked. His heart stuttered. But somewhere in his failing body, 12 names echoed like a heartbeat. He did not let go. Rune counted the survivors as they passed through the bulkhead. It was the only thing keeping him sane. Watching the numbers climb while electricity crackled behind him, and 2 people held open a door that wanted to kill them. 38. 39. 40. The injured moved slowly, supported by healthier workers. Each step through the bulkhead felt like a small victory against the darkness that had tried to claim them. On the other side, rescue teams waited with medical equipment and stretchers. 41. 42. 43. Rune looked back at Danny. The human was barely standing now, held up only by his grip on the lever. His body shook with the electricity running through it. His eyes were open but seemed to see something far away, something Rune could not imagine. Almost there, Rune called to him. Hold on. Please hold on. Danny did not respond. Perhaps he could not, but he did not let go. 44. 45. Drask released his override the moment the 45th worker cleared the bulkhead. The Gorvani was across the gap before Rune could blink, his powerful legs launching him over the chasm in a single bound. He landed beside Danny just as the human's hands finally released the lever. The bulkhead slammed shut with a sound like a gunshot. Danny collapsed. Drask caught him before he hit the ground, cradling the small human form in arms that could crush stone. The Gorvani's face, usually so hard and unreadable, showed something that looked remarkably like fear. "Medic," Drask bellowed. "We need a medic now." Rune was the 46th through, squeezing through just before the bulkhead sealed. The 47th, a Linari with a broken wing, had already been carried through moments earlier. Everyone was out. Everyone was alive, but Danny was not moving. The rescue ship's medical bay was small, designed for emergencies rather than extended care. 3 doctors worked on Danny, each from a different species. A Gorvani surgeon handled the physical trauma, her stone-like hands surprisingly gentle. A Linari specialist monitored his brain activity with instruments that hummed softly. A human doctor, called in from a distant station via holographic link, directed the treatment that Danny's heart stopped for the first time 6 minutes after he arrived. The doctors restarted it. They pumped his body full of medicines designed for human physiology, repaired the electrical burns on his hands, treated the shock that threatened to shut down his organs. For an hour, they fought to keep him alive. His heart stopped again. They restarted it again. Outside the medical bay, Rune sat on the floor with his back against the wall. He had refused to leave, refused food and water, refused everything except the chance to wait. Other survivors came and went, checking on the human who had saved them, but Rune stayed constant. Drask found him there during the 3rd hour of waiting. The Gorvani foreman lowered himself to the floor, a difficult movement for someone of his size and build. He sat beside Rune in silence for a long moment. "I was wrong about humans," Drask finally said. Rune said nothing. "We Gorvani believe that strength is everything, that the strong lead and the weak follow. That courage comes from knowing you cannot be hurt." Drask stared at the medical bay door. But he knew he could be hurt. He knew he might die. And he went anyway. "Twice. He told me something," Rune said quietly. "When I asked how he stayed calm during the collapse, he said he was not calm. He said he was terrified. He said he just put the fear somewhere else." Drask considered this. Where does a human put fear? I do not know. But wherever it is, that place must be very full by now. The medical bay door opened. The Linari doctor emerged, her feathers ruffled with exhaustion. Both Rune and Drask rose to their feet. "He is stable," the doctor said. "His heart is beating on its own. The burns are healing. The shock has passed." She paused, and her 3-pupiled eyes held something close to wonder. He should not be alive. The amount of electricity that passed through his body would have killed most species instantly. But humans, their hearts are stubborn organs. They do not want to stop. "Can we see him?" Rune asked. "He is unconscious. He will likely remain so for several days while his body recovers. But yes, you may see him." The room was dim, filled with the soft sounds of medical equipment. Danny lay on a bed too big for him, surrounded by monitors displaying information in 6 different languages. His hands were wrapped in regeneration bandages, and patches on his chest tracked his heartbeat that he looked small. Rune had not realized how small humans were until this moment, seeing Danny surrounded by machines built for larger species. Small and fragile, and somehow still breathing. Drask approached the bed slowly, as if afraid of breaking something. The Gorvani stood there for a long moment, looking down at the unconscious human. "I owe you my life," Drask said quietly. "I owe you 46 lives. In my culture, such a debt can never be fully repaid. But I will try. For the rest of my days, I will try." He reached out and touched Danny's bandaged hand, very gently. "Rest now, little human. You have done enough." Rune took a position by the window, settling into wait. Outside, the stars continued their slow dance across the void. Somewhere among them was Earth, the harsh world that had produced this impossible man. Rune did not know much about humans, but he was beginning to understand why the galaxy called them Deathworlders. IT was not because they came from a dangerous place. IT was because danger could not stop them. 2 months passed before Danny walked without assistance. The medical station orbiting Palax 3 had kept him in recovery, first in critical care and then in rehabilitation. His right hand would never work quite the same again. The nerve damage from the electrical burns had left 3 fingers partially numb, and the strength of his grip was maybe 70% of what it used to be. But he was alive. 46 others were alive because of him. The Gorvan Mining Consortium had been torn apart by investigations. Every safety protocol was examined, every decision questioned. In the end, Supervisor Brell was removed from his position, and the entire deep mining division was restructured. New regulations spread across the Galactic Trade Coalition, rules about emergency procedures and worker safety that would affect mines on 100 different worlds. They called them the Reeves Protocols. Danny had not asked for any of it. He did not want his name attached to policies and procedures. He just wanted to be left alone, to heal in peace, to stop dreaming about darkness and crushing stone and the feeling of electricity tearing through his body. But the galaxy had other plans. The Coalition wanted to honor him. A formal ceremony broadcast across all member worlds, recognizing his actions. Danny refused the first invitation and the second and the third. He did not want medals or speeches or his face on screens. Rune changed his mind. The young Talaxian visited every day during Danny's recovery. He brought food from the station's cafeteria, helped with physical therapy exercises, and filled the silence with stories about his home world and his family. Somewhere along the way, Danny had stopped seeing him as an apprentice and started seeing him as something closer to his son. "They need to see you," Rune said one evening, sitting by Danny's bed. "All of them. Every species in the Coalition." "Why? What difference does it make?" "Because they think humans are weak." Rune's 4 hands folded together in his lap. "They think your kind breaks under pressure. They think you're good only for simple tasks, that you cannot be trusted with real responsibility. But you prove them wrong. If they see you, if they hear your story, things will change." Danny stared out the window at the stars. "I did not do it for recognition. I know. That is why you must accept it." Rune leaned forward. "Not for yourself. For all the other humans who come after you. For every human who will work alongside species that do not respect them. Show them what a human really is." Danny thought about this for a long time. He thought about the coal miners back on Earth, the ones who had walked into darkness every day knowing the mountain could take them at any moment. They never got recognition. They never got ceremonies. Most people did not even know their names. Maybe that could be different out here. Maybe something good could come from all this pain. "Fine," Danny said. "One ceremony. No more." The Great Hall of the Coalition headquarters could hold 10,000 beings of various sizes and species. On the day of the ceremony, it was full. Representatives from all 12 species present at the collapse attended, along with diplomats, miners, and citizens who had traveled from distant worlds just to be there. Danny stood on a platform at the center of the hall, wearing formal clothes that felt strange after months in medical gowns. His right hand ached inside its bandage. He wanted to be anywhere else. The Coalition chairman was ancient, a member of a species so old that their name had been lost to time. They spoke in a voice that resonated through the hall without any need for amplification. "Danny Reeves of Earth, you entered darkness to save those you did not know. You suffered pain that would have stopped most beings. You went back when any reasonable person would have stayed safe. The Galactic Trade Coalition hereby grants you the title First Among Deathworlders, recognizing courage beyond measure and service to all species." The crowd made sounds of approval in a dozen different ways. Danny stood still, unsure how to respond. Then they asked him to speak. He had not prepared anything. He did not know what to say. But when he opened his mouth, the words came from somewhere deep, somewhere that had been waiting 12 years to speak. "I want to tell you about some men," Danny said. Their names were Randy, Martin, Terry, George, Jim, Junior, Dave, Jesse, Alva, Fred, Jack, and Owen. They died in a mine collapse on Earth 12 years ago. I was supposed to die with them, but I did not. The crowd was silent now. Every eye and sensor focused on the small human. For 12 years, I carried their names. I whispered them in the dark when I was afraid. They kept me company when I was alone. Danny paused, feeling the weight of what he was saying. When I crawled through that shaft, When I held that lever while electricity burned through me, I was not thinking about being a hero. I was thinking about them. I was thinking that maybe this time I could give them a chance to save someone. He looked out at the thousands of faces watching him. I did not save 46 people that day. 12 ghosts saved them. I was just the body they borrowed. The silence held for a long moment. Then Drask, standing in the front row, raised one massive fist and brought it down against his chest. The Gorvani salute. Around him, others joined. Different species, different gestures, but all meaning the same thing. Respect. Honor. Gratitude. Danny bowed his head and let the sound wash over him. The 12 names echoed in his heart, and for the first time since Sago, they did not feel like a weight. They felt like wings. 1 year later, Shaft 7 Delta reopened. They had rebuilt it completely, reinforced with new safety systems and designed according to the Reeves protocols. The Gorvan Mining Consortium had wanted to name it something grand, something that would impress investors and politicians. But the workers who had survived the collapse made their feelings clear. They called it Reeves Deep. Danny stood at the entrance on opening day, watching workers of a dozen species file into the shaft. Some of them he recognized from that terrible day underground. Others were new, drawn by the promise of good wages and the knowledge that this mine was now the safest in the coalition. Rune stood beside him. The young Talaxian was not so young anymore. He had completed his apprenticeship months ago and now worked as a full safety inspector, using the skills Danny had taught him to protect others. It feels strange, Rune said. Being back here. Danny nodded. Strange was not quite the right word, but he understood what Rune meant. This place had tried to kill them. Now it stood renewed, humming with life and purpose, as if the darkness had never come. You could have stayed away, Rune continued. No one would have blamed you. Why did you come back? Danny considered the question. His right hand flexed slowly, the damaged fingers still stiff despite a year of therapy. Because running away does not work. I tried that after Sago. I ran to the other side of the galaxy, and the darkness followed me here. The only way through is forward. A small monument stood at the entrance to Reeves Deep. Danny had not wanted it, but the survivors had insisted. It was simple, carved from local stone in the tradition of Earth mining memorials. The inscription read only his name and a number. Danny Reeves, 47 lives saved. 47 reasons to remember. Below the inscription, someone had added words in Gorvani script. Danny had learned enough of the language to read them now. He went back. Drask had suggested those words. The Gorvani foreman still worked for the consortium, now as head of safety operations across all their mines. He and Danny had become something like friends over the past year, an unlikely bond between stone and flesh. There is news from Earth, Rune said, pulling Danny from his thoughts. The Global Mining Memorial has added a new name to their wall. The first entry for off-world service. Danny felt something catch in his chest. He had not expected that. The memorial wall in West Virginia held thousands of names, miners who had died underground throughout history. To be listed there meant something. It meant being remembered alongside the men who had built nations with their sacrifice. They included a notation beside your name. Rune added, in Gorvani script. The memorial committee requested permission to use it. Danny closed his eyes. He thought about Randy and Martin and Terry, all the names he had carried for so long. He thought about the memorial wall, where some of them were listed, where their families came to remember. Now his name would be there too, with alien words beside it, marking him as something new. A bridge between worlds. A miner from Earth who went to the stars and found the same darkness waiting. That evening, Danny sat alone in his quarters at the mining station. His desk held 2 photographs. The first was old and faded, showing 12 men in coal-dusted faces. It had been taken on the morning of the Sago disaster, hours before everything changed. Danny looked at it every day. The second photograph was new. 47 workers of various species gathered outside the rebuilt Shaft 7 Delta. They had given it to Danny as a gift at the reopening ceremony. In the center of the group, looking uncomfortable with the attention, was Danny himself. 2 photographs. 2 disasters. 2 groups of people who had trusted him in the darkness that he had failed the first group. The knowledge still hurt, no matter how many times he told himself there was nothing he could have done. But the second group was alive because he had refused to fail again. Maybe that was all anyone could do. Carry the weight of the past and use it to strengthen the future. Danny reached for his communication console and typed a message to the Memorial Committee on Earth. He thanked them for the honor and asked for one small addition. Below the Gorvani words, he wanted 12 names listed, not his co-workers, his friends, the ones who had given him the strength to save 47 others. The response came within hours. They would make it happen. Danny leaned back in his chair and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, more humans were working alongside alien species, proving themselves in mines and factories and ships. The galaxy was beginning to understand what Deathworlders were capable of. Not violence, not conquest, something else entirely: stubbornness, loyalty, the refusal to leave anyone behind. Late that night, as the station cycled into its artificial darkness, Danny whispered 12 names like a prayer. But this time, the prayer ended differently. "Thank you," he said softly. "Thank you for not letting me quit." In the silence of space, surrounded by stars he had never dreamed of seeing, Danny Reeves finally felt at peace. The darkness would always be there, waiting. But so would he, and he would never stop going back.